Hey guys, Miss Shelly. All right, so we're going to move on to our next lesson. It's called Display Data in Box Plots. This lesson is going to take what we've learned in our previous lesson of mean, median, mode, and range, and we're going to use some of that information to actually graph on a number line using a box plot. What is a box plot? I'm glad you didn't ask. A box plot, or as you may have heard it before, is called a box and whisker plot, is a graph that gives you a good indication of how the values in the data are spread out. You can see here we have an example of a box plot with the number of eggs laid. So now let's take this and let's kind of define a little bit. Let's look at all the elements that are on this graph. So the very first thing that we're going to take a look at is this very first dot right here. That's our minimum. That's our smallest number in our data set. We used our minimum and our maximum, that's our last dot here, in the last topic to find the range. So now all we're going to do is we're going to take our minimum and our maximum and graph them. Another familiar term that we should know is right here in the middle. Just pointed my little pink arrow to it, the median. Remember, the median is the middle. I had a student earlier, shout out Mason, and he said, I asked him what median reminded him of, and he said it reminds him of the median that's in the middle of the road. And he's so right. I love that example because the median is the middle. So in this number of eggs laid, we know that the 6, that is our middle number. We also know that in our data set, our 2 is our minimum and our 10 is our maximum. The two new terms that we're going to talk about today in the next slide is the first quartile and the third quartile. And I'm going to tell you what those are on the next slide. So let's go ahead and keep going. So when we're making our box plots, we're going to do 6 steps, okay? 6 easy, simple steps, good to go. The first thing we want to do is we need to find our minimum, our medium, and our maximum. Easy peasy. So our minimum, remember our minimum's our smallest number. So when we're looking over here at our minimum, we're going to come and we're going to go to our very smallest number. Now my numbers are already in consecutive order, counting order. So that's good. If our numbers weren't, we would want to put them in the correct order. But since they are done for us, we're good. We can just move on. So our minimum, our smallest number is 7. And our maximum number, we can come and look, is 22. So now what we want to do is we need to find our median or our middle number. So I've already started with my tick marks. I've done the first and my last. Now I'm going to go and do the next one. So we're just going to keep doing this until we find that number in the middle. Remember, median is middle. So we need to find our number in the middle. And our number in the middle is 13. So our median is 13. Now we're going to move on to step 2. Step 2 is we want to find the median of each half or the quartile. Remember on the last slide right here, we talked about the first quartile and the third quartile. What those quartiles are and what a quartile is it's a value that divides a data set into 4 equal parts, with minimum being our first, maximum being our second, and then that median is in the middle. The quartile is going to take those 2 halves from minimum to median and divide that in half, and then it's going to take from median to maximum and divide that in half. So all we need to do that is we're going to look at our first half, our 7 to 13. Now, when we're counting, we're marking these off just like we did. We're going to do our tick marks on both sides. We're going to start at our 7, our small number, but we're going to go to the number right before our median. Our median, we're going to kind of look at, we're done with that. That splits it. That's like a wall that's there. So we don't actually want to use that to figure out what our first quartile is. So we're going to go to the number right before it. And we're just going to keep going back and forth just like this until we find our first quartile. And our first quartile is 10. So now, just like how we found our first quartile, we need to find our third quartile. So we're going to look at the numbers past our median, all the way to our maximum. And just like before, we're just going to go back and forth until we find that number in the middle. And that number in the middle, our third quartile, is 15. So, super easy. We've already done steps 1 and 2. That was easy, right? Now we're going to move on to step 3. We're going to draw a number line, which, ta-da, there's already one down here for us. Now, we want to make sure that when I'm drawing my numbers on my number line, I want to look at my minimum number and I want to go one smaller. So I want my very first number to be 6. And when I'm looking over here at my maximum, I want my very last number to be 23. So I can already graph those. So I want to start at 6 and I want to go all the way to 23. Now, it is up to you how you graph these. You can count by 2s, you can count by 1s. You have to really look at your numbers and figure out. You know, if you have a wide range of numbers, for instance, say your first number is 2 and your last number is 100. You don't really want to count by 1s. That is going to be way too big of a number line. For us, we're going from 6 to 23. That's not too bad. As long as we kind of keep them closer together, we can get them all in here. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to count all the way to 23. Do, 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 do. Aren't these sound effects awesome? So 17, 18. This is another reason while doing math and a pencil is so helpful, because if you mess up, you can go back. And I did pretty good. We don't need to erase anything. Okay, so now this comes a little bit maybe the trickier part. So step 3 is done. Now I want to move on to step 4. I want to draw a box from my first quartile to my third. Now, something I find helpful is I'm going to go ahead and, do you see my median, my first quartile and my third quartile? I'm going to find those numbers on my graph and I'm going to draw a line. This is going to help me when I'm making my box to make sure that I don't go past it or don't, make sure I don't go too short. So now that I have my 3 lines, my median, my first, and my third quartile, I'm going to go ahead and draw a box from the first quartile to the third. Then I draw my median line, make sure that's nice so you can see it. So now I've already done step 4 and 5. It was that easy. Now that leads me to step 6. I'm going to draw segments that extend from the box, from the median, from 10. I'm going to go all the way to 7. So I'm going to draw a dot at 7. I'm going to come over here and on my maximum 22, I'm going to draw a dot. And now I'm just going to kind of connect. And there you have it. We have just successfully graphed a box plot. Not too bad, right? No. So let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Let's do another one. So I have another set of numbers here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find my minimum, my median, and my maximum. Well, before I do anything, I already know what my minimum is because that's my very first number. That's 7. My maximum over here is 22. So now I need to figure out what my median or my number in the middle is. So I'm just going to go back and forth until I get to the middle, which is 13. Okay, so now that I found that, I'm going to go ahead and just cross this out. That way I can find my first quartile. So just like before, I'm going to just go back and forth until I find my first quartile, which is 12. I'm going to do the same thing after the median to my maximum. I'm just going to go back and forth until I find my third quartile, which is 16. So now that I've done this, now I can go ahead and I can graph. So once again, I need to go one number in front of my minimum and one number behind my maximum. So again, I'm going to be doing 6 to 23. Now, I found this awesome, cool tool over here, so I'm just going to kind of cheat a little bit and just lasso it so we don't have to redo that. Paste. Whoop, whoop. All right, for technology. Okay, so I have that. Now I can go ahead and get started Once again, I'm going to draw a median, a line at my 13. I'm going to do one at 12. I'm going to come over here and do one again at 16. I'm going to connect all my lines. Now I have my box. So now I need to make my whiskers. So I'm going to come to 7. I'm going to draw my dot. And then I'm going to connect my dot to my box. And then I'm going to come to my maximum at 22. I'm going to make my dot, my other whisker, and I'm going to connect it. You want your whisker to kind of be straight. I went a little crazy there, but... And that's it, guys. That's all that we are doing today. So let's keep taking a look at some more problems. Now, let's make it a little difficult, not much difficult. And now this time, let's see what happens when I have an even number of data points, okay? So, same thing I'm going to do. The other ones I'm going to do here. I'm going to find my minimum, my median, and my maximum. It's easy to start because my minimum is my first number, 10, and my maximum is my last number, 60. Now I need to find my median. So I'm just going to go back and forth until I reach that number in the middle. Now, I'm left with 2 numbers in the middle. There's 2 ways I can do this. I can go ahead and do all of the numbers from 25 all the way to 35, which as you can see, that takes a lot. I'm going to run out of room. Or I can find the average of those 2 numbers. Remember, when we find the average of those 2 numbers, we take those 2 numbers, we add them together, and then we divide by the number we add together. So to find the average of 25 and 35, we're going to do 25 plus 35, which gives me 10. 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 is 6, which gives me 60. Now, I'm going to take 60 and I'm going to divide it by 2 because I added 2 here. That gives me 3. Don't forget to bring that 0 down. So that tells me that my median number in between 25 and 35 is 30. So my median is 30. So just like we did last time, when we want to find our first and third quartiles, we don't want to look at our median. Our median is 30. That is our dividing line. So that means that we're going to go from 10 to 25. We're just going to go back and forth. Oh, once again, 2 numbers. I need to find the mean of those 2 numbers. So I'm going to erase this so I have room to find the mean. So I'm going to do 15 plus 25. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. Plus 1 is 4. So now I'm going to take and divide 20 into 40, which gives me 2. 4 minus 4 is 0. Bring that 0 down to 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. So my first quartile is 20. So we're going to, ooh, that 2 kind of got away from me. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. So we're going to start with 35 to 60, 45, 50. Once again, I'm left with 2 numbers. So I need to find the average or the mean of those 2 numbers. So I'm going to add 5 plus 0 is 5. 4 plus 5 is 9. That gives me 95. And I'm going to divide 95 by 2 because I added 2 numbers. 2 goes into 9 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 9 minus 8 is 1. Bring down my 5. 2 goes into 15 7 times. 7 times 2 is 14. 15 minus 14 is 1. Remember, guys, you got to put that decimal and pop it up. Pop that decimal right on up. Since I popped that decimal, I can add a 0 and bring it down. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 minus 10 is 0. So my third quartile is 47.5. So now that I have that, I can graph. Now, we talked about this earlier. For just a split second, I said that you can do any line numbers that you want on your number line. However, you can't always go by 1. For instance, my minimum is 10. My maximum is 60. That's a lot of numbers, guys. So I'm going to count by 5s because that's a little bit more manageable to do is to count by 5. So I'm going to start, remember you want to go one smaller. So if I'm counting by 5s, 5 would be the smaller tick to 10. And that means that up here, I'm going to go all the way to 65. You don't want your box plot to end on your minimum or your maximum. That's why we always go one tally mark over. So now I'm just going to count by 5s. Whew, just barely made it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines at my median, my first and my third quartile. So my median is here, my 30. My first quartile is here, it's 20. And my third quartile is 47.5, which is right in between those two, right about there. Now I can connect my dots, my lines. Ooh, look at that beautiful box plot forming. So I got the box plot part done. So now I need to do the whiskers. Remember, the whiskers are your minimums and your maximum. So I'm going to come here to my minimum of 10. I'm going to draw my dot and connect it. Then I'm going to come to my maximum here of 60, draw my dot, and then connect it. And there you have it. Another box plot done. All right, let's do a couple more examples. One more box plot, and then we're going to interpret a box plot. So I made this one a little bit more difficult. And how did I make it difficult? Well, it is not in numerical order. So we need to take these numbers and write them in order. First things first, let's start. So I have my smallest number is a 9. So I'm going to start 9. I have another 9. Another 9. My next smallest number is 15. And then I have another 15. And then another 15. After 15, I have, 21. Man, these numbers, they really remind me of counting by 3s here. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then finally another 21, a 24, and a 27. Okay, so now that I have put them in numerical order, now I can figure out what my minimum and my maximum is and my median. So my minimum is here, it's 9, my smallest number. My biggest number is 27. Now I need to figure out what my median, my number in the middle is. So we're just going to go back and forth until we get to the middle. Oh no, it's an even. What do I do? No worry, guys. All we need to do is add them and then divide. So 5 plus 1 is 6. 1 plus 2 is 3. I added 2 numbers, so I need to divide 2 into 36. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Bring down that 6. 8 times 2 is 16. That gives me 0. So my first quartile is 18. Now let's do the same thing for my second quartile. Oh, sorry, that wasn't my quartile. What am I thinking? I'm getting ahead of myself. That was my median. Okay, so remember, our median, that is our middle number. That is where we draw our lines in order to find our quartiles. So now we can find our quartiles. So 9, 15, 9, 15, 9. Oh no, 9, 15. So I need to once again add and find the mean. 9 plus 5 is 14. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I need to do 2 divided by 24, which hopefully some of us know that in our heads. But in case we don't, we're doing the work, and that shows me that my first quartile is 12. So since I found my first quartile, I can go and find my third quartile. So we'll start here, 21, 27, 21, 24. Oh, it's so easy. There's no dividing for this one. Since both of my numbers here are 21, then that must mean that my third quartile is also going to be 21. Super easy then, okay? So now, we were going through our numbers, and like I said, it sounded a lot like we were counting by threes. 9, 15, 21, 24, 27. Those are all numbers that are divisible by 3. So when I do my I go and I graph my box plot, I'm actually going to make my tally marks threes. So first thing I need to do is I need to say, okay, well, what comes in front of 9 if I'm counting by threes? 6. What comes after 27 when I count by threes? 30. So that means that on my graph, 6 is going to be my first number and 30 is going to be my second number. So now I'm just going to graph by threes. Oops, I got a little crazy over here. Went a little too far, that's fine. This is why we always try and work in pencil so that if we do go too far, we can just erase and readjust. So now it's time to graph my information. So I know that my first quartile is 12, my median is 18, and my third quartile is 21. So now all I need to do is connect the dots. Okay, good. So I have my box done. Now it's time to do our whiskers. So our minimum is 9. So I'm going to come over here to 9, draw my little dot, and then draw my whisker. My maximum is 27, so I'm going to draw my dot, and then my whisker. And there I have it. Another box plot complete. See, guys, it's not that hard. The hardest part is finding that first and third quartile. Everything else is just drawing our boxes and our whiskers. So let's take a look at this already done box plot and let's answer some questions on it. So I have this information. It says bags of donated clothes. And my numbers at the bottom, my 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, those are all pounds per bag. So let's figure out first, well, what is my minimum? Remember, my minimum is my smallest number and is also this guy. So that means that my minimum is 8. If I'm looking over here, let's jump down and let's do my maximum. If my minimum is this side, then this is my maximum, is the other side of my whisker. So that means that my maximum is at 20. So that is 20 is my maximum. Now, the median, remember, is the middle. So what is the middle line on the box? That is right here, the middle line on the box. It looks to be halfway between 16 and 18. And we know that halfway between 16 and 18 is 17. So that means that our median is 17. Now let's keep going. Let's find our first quartile. Our first quartile is our first line in the box, and that looks to be at 12. So our first quartile is 12. And our third quartile is our last line in the box, and it appears to be at 18. And that is all you have to do when you have a box plot like that. When you already have one grafted for you, it's even easier because now you're just looking at it and you're just writing the numbers. So let's take a look at one more example before I let you jump on and do your own work. So very first thing we want to find again is our minimum, our smallest number. So I'm going to go to my smallest whisker, and that is right here, my smallest whisker, and that is at 6. So my minimum is 6. Let's go now to our biggest whisker on the other side. And I say it's the biggest, even though it's the smallest length, it's the biggest number, which is 22. So now, just like we had talked about before, our median is our middle. So what is the median in the row, the middle of our box? That is right here at 14, that line. So that means our median is 14. Now let's figure out our quartiles. Our first quartile is our smallest quartile. That's the beginning of our box, and that's right here at 12. So our first quartile is 12. And our last line of our box, that is our third quartile, and that is at 20. And that's it, guys. That is how you display data in a box plot. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I love drawing these. They're so much fun. Now what I want you to do is hop on back over to Teams and complete today's assignment. And that's it, guys. Remember, as always, I miss you